All right, this is your pre-assignment for E1.7, and I'm just going to go over a couple of types of triangles and also the idea of perimeter. Okay, so when we look at triangles, we have three types that we're going to consider in this class. The three types are a right triangle, an isosceles triangle, and a scalene triangle. So I'm going to write underneath kind of the important properties that we want to know from each one. Okay, when we see a right triangle, the most important thing is that right triangles have a 90-degree angle, which we show by using a little box in the corner. Okay, it makes a perfect right angle, which is why we call it a right triangle. Okay, so I'm going to put down here, has a 90-degree angle, and it also satisfies the Pythagorean theorem. Okay, satisfies the Pythagorean theorem, which says that a squared plus b squared equals c squared. And these are the sides of the triangle. Okay, this is our a, this is our b, and our hypotenuse, or our longest side, is always our c. So any right triangle you have should have the property that if you take the two legs attached to the 90-degree angle, square those lengths, and add them together, it should equal the squared length of your hypotenuse, or your longest side. Okay, so that's what we want to remember about a right triangle. An isosceles triangle is one in which two of the lengths of two of the sides are equal. Okay, so let's put that as lengths of two sides are equal. Okay, so that means that this side and this side have the same length. Okay, now this is not an equilateral triangle. Some of y'all have learned about that. Equilateral triangle means all three sides are exactly the same. Okay, this is not true. In isosceles, two of the sides have the same length. Okay, all right, and then a scalene triangle basically is a triangle that doesn't satisfy any of the stuff we've talked about so far. It doesn't have a 90-degree angle. It doesn't have any sides that are the same length. So it's kind of your hodgepodge triangle, okay? So I'm just going to put no 90-degree angle, no equal sides. Okay, so for the most part, we're going to be looking to determine if it's a right, an isosceles, or a scalene. And in order to do that, to see if it's an isosceles triangle, we just see, does it have two equal sides? If it does, then it is. If it's not isosceles, then we check to see if it's a right triangle. And we can check by checking the Pythagorean theorem. If we square the two legs and add them together, and that equals the hypotenuse squared, then it's a right triangle. If it doesn't end up being isosceles or right, then we know it's scalene. So there's not really a way to check if it's scalene. It's just, if it happens to be none of the other options, then it's scalene. Okay. All right. So before we get into identifying that, I want to go ahead and look at perimeter. You've probably heard the word perimeter before. Perimeter just means the total distance of the triangle's edges. So think of like fencing. If I go all the way around something, I add all the edges up all the way around the figure. Okay, or in this case, the triangle. So on this next example, I want to identify the type of triangle, and then determine what the perimeter is. So notice if I look at this triangle, the first thing I want to look for is, does it have two sides that are equal? Okay, because if it has two equal sides, then it's isosceles. So notice we have 8 centimeters, 4 centimeters, and 12 centimeters. None of those are equal. So we know it's not isosceles. So then we want to check to see if it's going to be a right triangle. To check to see if it's a right triangle, I look for a 90-degree angle, which, I don't know, this one might be a 90-degree angle, we'll see. So let's go ahead and check the a squared plus b squared equals c squared. Okay, this is my longest side, so this would be my c. And then a and b are interchangeable. We'll call this one a and we'll call this one b. So if I want to check to see a squared plus b squared, does that equal c squared in this case? So I'm going to take 8 and square it and add it to 4 squared and see, does that equal 12 squared? Okay, 8 squared is 64, 4 squared is 16, and 12 squared is 144. Now, if I add 16 and 64 together, that gives me 80. Okay, and 80 is not equal to 144. So this tells me this is not a right triangle. And then since we have no equal sides, then we know, this is not isosceles. So if it's not a right triangle and it's not isosceles, that means it's a scalene triangle. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and put on here that this is a scalene triangle. So now that we know what kind of triangle it is, now we want to go ahead and find the perimeter. And the perimeter we get from just adding all the sides together. So here perimeter is equal to 8 plus 4 plus 12, which if I add these together, 8 and 4 is 12, plus another 12 gives me 24 centimeters for my perimeter. Okay, let's look at another one. On the second one it says we have a triangle with the edge lengths 2, 4, and 5. Now we don't actually have a picture, but we know we have the lengths. So notice none of these sides are equal, so I'm going to put over here no equal sides. If we have no equal sides, then we know it's not isosceles. So then we want to go ahead and check to see if it's a right triangle. To check and see if it's a right triangle, I check the Pythagorean Theorem. So I'm going to say a squared plus b squared, does that equal c squared? So remember, your c has to be your longest side. So here c would be 5, and then I'm just going to call this one a and this one b. The other two, it doesn't matter, but c has to be your longest side. So I want to see if I do 2 squared plus 4 squared, does that equal 5 squared? 2 squared is 4, 4 squared is 16, 5 squared is 25. So notice if I add these together, 4 and 16 gives me 20, which is not equal to 25. So again, not a right triangle, not a right triangle. Okay, so if it's not a right triangle and it's not isosceles, again, this would be a scalene. So this is a scalene triangle. And then to find the perimeter, we just add all the sides together. So I'm going to do 2 plus 4 plus 5. 2 and 4 gives me 6, plus 5 gives me 11, and it doesn't give me a length. It doesn't say inches or centimeters, so I'm just going to circle the 11. No units necessary. Okay, let me see if I have another one. No, I don't have any more. Okay, so with that being said, we should now be able to do your Pre-E1.7, okay, to determine if it's isosceles or right or scalene. You check for isosceles, you check for right. If it's neither of those, then it's isosceles. And remember, perimeter is adding all the sides together. Okay, so you should be able to do your Pre-E1.7 quiz in my math lab. Let me know if you have any questions.